Lalibela is a town in northern Ethiopia famous for monolithic rock-cut churches. Lalibela is one of Ethiopia's holiest cities, second only to Aksum, and a center of pilgrimage. Unlike Aksum, the population of Lalibela is almost completely Ethiopian Orthodox Christian. Ethiopia is one of the earliest nations to adopt Christianity in the first half of the 4th century, and its historical roots date to the time of the Apostles. The layout and names of the major buildings in Lalibela are widely accepted, especially by local clergy, to be a symbolic representation of Jerusalem. This has led some experts to date the current church forms to the years following the capture of Jerusalem in 1187 by Muslim leader Saladin. Lalibela is located in the semi-Nwalo zone of the Amhara ethnic division at roughly 2,500 meters above sea level. It is the main town in Lasta Woreda, which was formerly part of Bugna Woreda. History. During the reign of St. Gebra Meskel Lalibela, the current town of Lalibela was known as Roa. The saintly king was named so because a swarm of bees is said to have surrounded him at his birth, which his mother took as a sign of his future reign as emperor of Ethiopia. The names of several places in the modern town and the general layout of the rock-cut churches themselves are said to mimic names and patterns observed by Lalibela during the time he spent as a youth in Jerusalem and the Holy Land. Lalibela, revered as a saint, is said to have seen Jerusalem, and then attempted to build a new Jerusalem as his capital in response to the capture of Old Jerusalem by Muslims in 1187. Each church was carved from a single piece of rock to symbolize spirituality and humility. Christian faith inspires many features with biblical names. Even Lalibela's river is known as the River Jordan. Lalibela remained the capital of Ethiopia from the late 12th into the 13th century. The first European to see these churches was the Portuguese explorer Pero da Covilhã. Portuguese priest Francisco Alvarez accompanied the Portuguese ambassador on his visit to Lebna Dengal in the 1520s. He describes the unique church structures as follows: "I weary of writing more about these buildings, because it seems to me that I shall not be believed if I write in more. I swear by God, in whose power I am, that all I have written is the truth." Although Ramuso included plans of several of these churches in his 1550 printing of Alvarez's book, who supplied the drawings remains a mystery. The next reported European visitor to Lalibela was Miguel de Castanhazo, who served as a soldier under Cristóvão da Gama and left Ethiopia in 1544. After de Castanhazo, more than 300 years passed until the next European, Gerhard Rolfs, visited Lalibela sometime between 1865 and 1870. According to the Fatah al-Habasa of Sifab ad-Din Ahmad, Ahmad Gran burned one of the churches of Lalibela during his invasion of Ethiopia. However, Richard Pankhurst has expressed his skepticism about this event, pointing out that although Sifab ad-Din Ahmad provides a detailed description of a rock-hewn church, only one church is mentioned. Pankhurst adds that what is special about Lalibela is that it is the site of 11 rock churches, not just one, and they are all within more or less a stone's throw of each other. Pankhurst also notes that the Royal Chronicles, which mention Ahmad Gran's laying waste to the district between July and September 1531, are silent about the Imam ravaging the fabled churches of the city. He concludes by stating that had Ahmad Gran burned a church at Lalibela, it was most likely Bet Medhan Alam, and if the Muslim army was either mistaken or misled by the locals, then the church he set fire to was Ganata Maryam, 10 miles east of Lalibela, which likewise has a colonnade of pillars cut from the mountain. Churches. This rural town is known around the world for its churches carved from within the earth from living rock. which play an important part in the history of rock-cut architecture. Though the dating of the churches is not well established, most are thought to have been built during the reign of Lalibela, namely during the 12th and 13th centuries. UNESCO identifies 11 churches, assembled in 4 groups. The northern group, Bayat Medhan Alam, home to the Lalibela cross and believed to be the largest monolithic church in the world, probably a copy of St. Mary of Zion in Aksum. Bayat Maryam, possibly the oldest of the churches, and a replica of the tombs of Adam and Christ. Bayat Golgotha Mikhail, known for its arts and said to contain the tomb of King Lalibela. Bayat Meskel. Bayat Dinagel, the western group. Bayat Georgis, thought to be the most finely executed and best preserved church. The eastern group. Bayat Emmanuel, possibly the former royal chapel. Bayat Kedis Mercurius, which may be a former prison. Bayat Abalibanos. Bayat Gabriel Rufael, possibly a former royal palace linked to a holy bakery. Bayat Lahem. Farther afield lie the monastery of Ashetan Maryaban Yimrehan Christos Church. There is some controversy as to when some of the churches were constructed. David Buxton established the generally accepted chronology, noting that 2 of them follow, with great fidelity of detail, the tradition represented by Deborah Damo as modified at Yemrahana Christos. Since the time spent to carve these structures from the living rock must have taken longer than the few decades of King Lalibela's reign, Buxton assumes that the work extended into the 14th century. However, David Phillipson, professor of African archaeology at Cambridge University, has proposed that the churches of Mercurius, Gabriel Rufael, and Danagel were initially carved out of the rock half a millennium earlier, as fortifications or other palace structures in the waning days of the Aksumite kingdom, and that Lalibela's name simply came to be associated with them after his death. On the other hand, local historian Gatichu Makonnen credits Maskal Kibra, Lalibela's queen, with having one of the rock-hewn churches built as a memorial for her husband after his death, contrary to theories advocated by writers like Graham Hancock. According to Buxton, the great rock-hewn churches of Lalibela were not built with the help of the Knights Templar, asserting abundant evidence exists to show that they were produced solely by medieval Ethiopian civilization. For example, while Buxton notes the existence of a tradition that Abyssinians invoked the aid of foreigners to construct these monolithic churches, and admits that there are clearly signs of Coptic influence in some decorative details, he is adamant about the native origins of these creations. But the significant fact remains that the rock churches continue to follow the style of the local built-up prototypes, which themselves retain clear evidence of the basically Aksumite origin. The churches are also a significant engineering feat, given that they are all associated with water, exploiting an artesian geological system that brings the water up to the top of the mountain ridge on which the city rests. Other UNESCO mission reports. In a 1970 report of the historic dwellings of Lalibela, Sandro Angel evaluated the vernacular earthen architecture on the Lalibela World Heritage Site, including the characteristics of the traditional earth houses and analysis of the state of conservation. His report described 2 types of vernacular housing found in the area. One type are a group he calls the tukuls, round huts built of stone and usually having 2 stories. The second of the single-story chika buildings which are round and built of earth and wattle, which he feels reflects more scarcity. Angel's report also included an inventory of Lalibela's traditional buildings, placing them in categories rating the state of conservation. Other features. Lalibela is also home to an airport, a large market, 2 schools and a hospital. Demographics. Based on figures from the Central Statistical Agency in 2005, the town has an estimated total population of 14,668, of whom 7,049 were males and 7,619 were females. The 1994 national census recorded its population to be 8,484, of whom 3,709 were males and 4,775 were females. Image gallery.